Hello, my name is Remy Troupin. I'm the Executive Director of the Washington State Budget and Policy Center. We're an independent nonprofit think tank that looks at the state budget and does analysis of it and produces solutions on how to move forward. Today I'm going to give you a briefing on the status of our state budget, talk about the economic recession's impact on our state budget, look at some of the possible solutions for making a balanced approach to our state budget, and hopefully you'll get a better sense of where we're going forward. So let me start with some budget basics. Most funding for the state comes from the sales tax. The sales tax is unstable and is regressive. And when we are in an economic recession, it has a pretty significant impact on the amount of revenue we have available to fund important public priorities. The legislature does a 2-year budget, and they just finished doing that 2-year budget last year. Right this year, they're looking at making changes to that 2-year budget, and we'll get more into the detail on that later. This budget goes from July 2009 through June 30th of 2011. And the changes that are considered this year are for the current budget, and again, that's through June 30th, 2011. It's important to understand where our state invests its revenue in the state budget. Over half of our state budget goes into education and opportunity, and this is investments in our K-12 system, it's investments in our community college system, and investments in making sure that people can be trained for the knowledge-based economy. The second area is the area of thriving communities. These are investments such as our state infrastructure, around transportation, communications, our justice system, and our arts. The third area is investments in healthy people and environment. These are investments in things like the basic health program. These are investments in environmental expenditures that keep our air clean, our water clean, and efforts that promote a healthy state. The fourth area, and the smallest area of our state budget investments, is the area of economic security. These are things like making sure workers have the supports they need, such as childcare or health care, to make employment practical and possible, and making sure that people can meet their basic needs. It's important to note that the state budget as a share of our economy has been steady for many years, and in fact, as a result of the current economic recession, has actually dropped significantly. And the cuts that we're currently looking at, plus the cuts that happened last year, will represent a 14% decrease in the state budget from the previous biennium. So $3.6 billion in cuts have already been made in this biennium. This will result in larger class sizes, less access to college, elimination of health insurance for tens of thousands of Washingtonians, a weakened health infrastructure, and a weakened environmental infrastructure as well. Since that time, a new $2.8 billion shortfall has opened up. That's has resulted because of two main reasons. Revenue has continued to fall because of the economic recession. People still are not buying things. And in a recession, more people seek out the public structures that we've tried to build up to respond to issues like this: healthcare, schools, and actually prisons. The cost of maintaining those things have actually gone up. So the challenge before us for the supplemental budget is that 70% of the budget is actually unavailable for cuts, and that's for three reasons. One, timing. We've already spent at least $10 billion. Two, there are legal restrictions. We have to spend money constitutionally on K-12 education and other reasons. And three, strings that are attached to the Federal Recovery Act dollars that we receive so that we didn't lay off more healthcare and education workers. If we continue with a cuts-only approach to the impact of our economic recession on the state budget, the impact of the proposed cuts would be class sizes will swell, an additional 100,000 Washingtonians will lose their health insurance, more than 10,000 low-income students will lose their financial aid, 85,000 seniors would no longer be able to afford their medication, 50,000 pregnant mothers would lose critical prenatal support, The state would abandon programs to protect clean water and clean up toxic pollution. Working parents across the state would lose access to childcare, and many more. Luckily, we have other options. A balanced solution is an economically sound approach that includes revenue. It's common and reasonable, and we have some sensible options before us. Raising revenue is an economically sound approach. Leading economists agree. Raising revenue is a common approach that many other states have pursued. In response to this current recession, at least 30 states have enacted revenue increases in 2009. It's a response that is consistent with our past practices. In the recession of the early 1990s, some 44 states raised revenue. In the early 2000s, some 30 states did so, as this slide shows. According to analysis by a respected national think tank, there's no evidence that tax-raising states from the 2001 recession were any faster or any slower to recover from the recession than those did not raise taxes. There are many options on how to raise revenue to support education, healthcare, and environmental priorities. I'm going to outline 4 of those approaches. The first is to modernize outdated fees for major polluters in the state, including pesticide and oil manufacturers. This proposal would create jobs in the construction industry, clean up our waterways, and raise $225 million a year. The next option is to close tax loopholes. And many of these approaches are in House Bill 3176. For example, it closes a giveaway to private jet owners. It makes out-of-state businesses pay their fair share of taxes, closes a tax exemption on big out-of-state banks, and that approach would raise over $400 million a year. A third approach is to tax items that have negative public health and environmental consequences. The first option is to create a new tax on bottled water, which would raise $135 million a year. The second is to tax soda by creating a penny per ounce tax on sodas, which would raise $475 million a year. To extend the sales tax to candy and gum, which would raise $44 million a year. And finally, to increase the cigarette tax, which would raise another $85 million a year. The final approach would be a temporary increase in the sales tax, which would be administratively easy to implement. A penny increase would raise $1 billion a year, and every tenth of a penny would raise $100 million. One option the legislature could consider to soften the impact of a sales tax increase is to fund the Working Families Tax Rebate. The Working Families Tax Rebate would refund back to low-income working families a significant portion of the sales tax that they pay every year.